It depicted an invisible species, their forms only partially visible through ripples in the air, as they approached a human figure standing tall, unflinching. The human was a symbol of strength and defiance, an embodiment of humanity's unwavering spirit. Gregory leaned in, his lips curling into a sneer. "What's this supposed to be? Some kind of alien encounter?" It's primitive," he muttered, almost more to himself than to Marcus. "It looks like you just splattered some paint on a canvas and hoped for the best." Marcus's heart sank, but he fought to maintain his composure. "It's more than that. It's a symbol of humanity's encounter with something greater, something we can't even begin to understand. The invisible beings are out there, just waiting for us to make contact. My paintings are a way to show that we are ready, that we can handle what comes next." Gregory looked at him, his eyes narrowing. "Invisible beings? You've got to be kidding me. There's no place for fantasy in real art. People want to see things they can understand, things that are real. Your work is just a bunch of nonsense." He pushed the painting aside with a wave of his hand. "I don't have time for this. Take your vision somewhere else." Marcus's face flushed with embarrassment, but he refused to let Gregory's words defeat him. "I believe in my art," he said quietly. "It's more than just a painting. It's a story, a message from the past and the future. You don't see it now, but one day, you will." Gregory chuckled, the sound dripping with mockery. "Sure, kid. Maybe if you manage to sell some of your vision in the future, you can come back and tell me I was wrong. But right now, you're wasting your time." He turned away, signaling that the conversation was over. With a heavy heart, Marcus gathered his portfolio and turned to leave. He couldn't help but feel a sense of disappointment, not just in Gregory's harsh dismissal, but in the realization that his art would never fit into the narrow confines of the gallery world. It was more than just colors on a canvas. It was a story of invisible forces and unseen histories, a legacy that had been passed down through generations of his ancestors. As Marcus walked out of the gallery and onto the busy streets, he couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was at play. His art wasn't just meant for this world, it was meant to reach across dimensions, to make a connection between humans and the invisible species he had painted. The invisible beings weren't just metaphors, they were real, and they were waiting for humanity to discover them. Meanwhile, inside the gallery, Gregory returned to his desk, pleased with himself for rejecting another amateur. He didn't even bother to look at Marcus's portfolio again. As far as he was concerned, art was a business, and only the most polished and marketable pieces had any value. But unbeknownst to Gregory, Marcus's paintings were far from ordinary. They weren't just stories, they were a map, a blueprint for the invisible species to find their way to Earth. The designs, the colors, the distortions in the air, they all held a key to something much greater than anyone realized. The invisible species, dormant for eons, began to stir, sensing the resonance of Marcus's work. They had been watching from the shadows, invisible to human eyes, but they had never been truly out of reach. They had always known that the time would come when humanity would be ready to meet them, if only they could find the right guide. That guide was Marcus Blackwell. As the first of the alien species began to manifest in subtle ways, ripples in the air and faint distortions, they came closer to Earth, drawn by the power of the paintings. These beings, unseen and misunderstood, were waiting for humanity to rise to the challenge, to prove they were worthy of this extraordinary encounter. Back at the gallery, Gregory had no idea that the rejection of one young artist was about to change the course of history. The invisible species were not just visitors, they were a test, and humanity's ability to face them would determine their future. For now, the world remained unaware, but it was only a matter of time before the invisible species would make themselves known, starting with the artist who had seen them first. The days following Marcus's rejection by Gregory Foster and the Rising Stars Gallery were filled with a sense of unease. The bustling streets of the city had never felt more alien to him, as if the weight of his unseen creation was beginning to take form around him. He found himself unable to focus on anything except the intricate symbols and patterns within his paintings, the distorted air, the swirling colors, and the message they carried. Something inside him told him that his work was more than just an expression of his inner thoughts, it was a key, a bridge between worlds. Back in his small apartment, Marcus hung his paintings on the walls, surrounding himself with the very pieces that had been dismissed by the art world. Each one seemed to pulse with an energy he hadn't fully understood until now. When he stared at them long enough, he could feel it, an invisible presence that seemed to shift and move just beyond his perception. It wasn't just in the paintings themselves, but in the air around him, a hum that seemed to vibrate through the space. The invisible species, those beings he had depicted in his work, were closer now than ever before. Marcus knew something was about to change. One evening, as he sat in front of his easel, lost in thought, the hum intensified. It wasn't just in the air now, it was in his bones, in his mind, in the very core of his being. He stood up, his heart racing, and moved to the window. The city skyline stretched before him, bathed in the cold glow of the street lights. For a moment, everything seemed still, as though time itself had paused. Then, the faintest shimmer appeared in the corner of his eye, like a ripple in the air, a distortion of reality itself. He blinked, unsure of what he had seen. But when he looked back, the shimmer was gone. His hand shook slightly as he reached for one of his paintings, an abstract piece that had always felt like more than just paint on canvas. He had known there was something special about this particular work. It was as if the painting itself was alive, a conduit for something far beyond the realms of human understanding. Suddenly, a soft voice echoed in his mind. "You found us." Marcus froze, his breath caught in his throat. The voice wasn't loud, but it was clear, resonating with a sense of calm and purpose. The air shimmered again, and a form began to materialize in the center of his room. At first, it was just a distortion, a ripple in space, but then, slowly, it took shape, a figure that seemed to flicker in and out of view, its outline shifting as if it were made of light and shadow. "You are the one who has seen us," the figure said, its voice echoing with a strange, melodic quality. "Your art, your creations, they have unlocked the door that connects our worlds." Marcus took a step back, his mind reeling with the impossibility of what was happening. "But I thought it was just art. Just my imagination." The figure flickered again, becoming clearer for a moment. "Your imagination is a bridge, Marcus Blackwell. You see what others cannot. You are a seer, a bearer of the hidden truth. Your paintings are not mere fantasy. They are the key to understanding the invisible." The realization hit Marcus like a wave, and for the first time, he truly understood the weight of his work. His paintings were not just representations of a fictional alien species, they were a map, a guide to beings who existed beyond the visible spectrum. These invisible beings had been watching Earth for eons, waiting for the right moment to make contact. "You've been here all along?" Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "We have," the figure replied. "We have always been here, hidden in plain sight. We are the ones who watch, the guardians of forgotten knowledge. Your ancestors knew of us. They whispered our names in myths and stories, but they did not understand who we truly were. Now, you see us." The figure's presence grew stronger, the shimmering light becoming more distinct, revealing a form that was not entirely human, yet not entirely alien either. It was as if it were an amalgamation of light, air, and shadow, a being that existed beyond the limitations of human perception. Marcus's mind raced with questions. "Why me? Why now?" "Because you are ready," the figure replied. "You have seen the invisible, and you are the only one who can guide humanity to understand what lies beyond your world. The time is coming, Marcus. Your art will lead the way. But humanity must be prepared. We will not reveal ourselves until the moment is right." The presence of the figure seemed to expand, filling the room with a strange energy. It was as though Marcus's own thoughts were being woven into the fabric of the being's presence. He could feel the power, the weight of the responsibility that now rested on his shoulders. "How can I help?" he asked, his voice steady now, though his mind was still spinning with the enormity of what he was experiencing. "You must show humanity what they cannot see," the figure said. "Through your paintings, through your words, you must guide them. But first, you must understand the full truth of our existence. We have been watching, yes, but we have also been waiting for the right moment to reveal ourselves. We are close, Marcus. Closer than you realize. As the figure spoke, the air around him seemed to grow warmer, as though the invisible species was drawing closer to their long-anticipated encounter with humanity. Marcus could feel it in the very air he breathed. Something was coming, something that would change everything. Suddenly, the shimmering figure began to fade, its form becoming less distinct with each passing second. The time is near, the voice echoed in his mind one final time. Prepare yourself, Marcus Blackwell. Humanity's fate rests in your hands. With that, the presence was gone, leaving Marcus standing alone in his apartment. The hum in the air faded, but the sense of awe and urgency lingered. His paintings, once dismissed as mere imagination, now felt alive. They weren't just creations, they were messages, and they were calling out to something far greater than anything he could comprehend. Marcus didn't know how much time he had before the invisible species made their full presence known to the world, but one thing was certain, humanity's encounter with the unknown was inevitable, and it was his art that would serve as the key to unlock this cosmic doorway. And somewhere, in the vast expanse of the universe, the invisible species waited, watching. They had chosen their guide, and now it was only a matter of time before humanity would face them. The days that followed the strange encounter with the invisible being left Marcus with more questions than answers. His mind, once consumed with the mundane realities of life, now raced with the impossible. The message that the figure had imparted on him was clear, yet it was also overwhelming. His art, once a solitary pursuit, was now the key to something far greater, something that involved the very fabric of humanity's future. In the quiet of his apartment, Marcus couldn't shake the sense of urgency that hung in the air. The figure, the ones who watch, had promised that the time was near. But near for what? What exactly was he supposed to do with the knowledge he had been given? The world around him hadn't changed. People still went about their lives, oblivious to the fact that the invisible species were preparing to reveal themselves. No one seemed to notice the faint distortions in the air, the slight shimmers that flickered just beyond their vision. But Marcus knew. He could see them. At night, the hum that had once been a faint presence now resonated more strongly, vibrating through his body as he slept. The paintings that had once been static, lifeless pieces of art, began to change before his eyes. New shapes, new colors, and new symbols emerged from the canvas, almost as if they were alive, pulsating with an energy that Marcus couldn't fully comprehend. The first time it happened, Marcus was standing in front of one of his pieces, a swirling depiction of a human figure, tall and unyielding, standing against an invisible force. The image had always felt powerful to him, but it had never been this, alive. As he gazed at the painting, the lines began to shift and twist, distorting in ways that should have been impossible. The human figure in the painting seemed to step forward, becoming three-dimensional, as if it were about to step off the canvas itself. Marcus took a step back, his heart pounding. He reached out instinctively, his fingers brushing against the canvas. To his shock, the surface felt warm, as though it were radiating heat from within. A voice echoed in his mind again, calm yet firm. You are changing, Marcus Blackwell. You are becoming more than you were. The art you have created is the bridge between our worlds. You are the key to humanity's understanding of what lies beyond. Marcus's breath quickened. He couldn't fully grasp what was happening, but he felt the transformation within himself. It wasn't just his art that was changing, it was him. The hum he had once heard in the air now vibrated within him, a constant presence that seemed to merge with his thoughts, his emotions. His senses were heightened. His awareness of the world around him sharpened. He could feel the pulse of life in the city streets, the ebb and flow of energy in the air, the subtle movements of the invisible species that had been watching all along. He was no longer just an artist. He was a conduit, a channel between two worlds, one visible, the other hidden. As the weeks passed, Marcus's physical appearance began to change as well. It wasn't dramatic, but there were subtle shifts. His skin seemed to glow faintly in the dark, as if illuminated from within. His eyes, once ordinary, now shimmered with an intensity that made others uneasy when they looked into them. He felt more alive, more connected to the universe, as if the invisible species were gradually awakening something deep inside him. One evening, as Marcus sat alone in his apartment, sketching the latest image that had come to him, he felt a sudden shift in the air. The familiar hum was stronger now, almost deafening, and he knew that the time had come. The invisible species were no longer just waiting, they were preparing to make themselves known. Marcus could feel their presence, a growing force that was impossible to ignore. He stood up, his heart racing, and walked toward his window. The city below seemed unchanged, people moved about, unaware of the impending change, but for Marcus, the world felt different. The air was thick with anticipation. He could feel it in his bones. Just as he turned away from the window, something strange happened. A faint ripple of light appeared in the air before him, and the figure that had spoken to him earlier, the one he had seen flicker in and out of existence, materialized once again. "You are ready, Marcus," the voice resonated in his mind, calm and reassuring. "The moment has come. You are no longer just the artist. You are the vessel through which humanity will understand the invisible. You must show them the truth." Marcus's breath caught in his throat. The figure, though still flickering in and out of view, was more defined now. It was taller, its form less ethereal and more solid, though still difficult to comprehend fully. The shimmering figure extended a hand toward him, and Marcus instinctively reached out, his fingers brushing against the energy field that surrounded the being. "You have seen us," the figure continued, "but now you must help humanity see. They will not believe until they feel what you have felt, until they experience what you have experienced. You must make them ready. Your art will lead the way." Marcus nodded, the weight of the responsibility settling upon him. He had never imagined that his paintings would become more than just an expression of his inner thoughts. But now, he understood. His art wasn't just a reflection of his imagination, it was a map, a guide to an unseen world that humanity was destined to encounter. "How do I make them see?" Marcus asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Through your paintings," the figure replied. "You must reveal the truth. You must show them the invisible species in a way that they will understand. Only then will humanity be prepared for what is to come." The figure's form began to flicker again, its presence growing fainter with each passing second. But before it disappeared completely, it spoke one final time, "We are ready, Marcus Blackwell. The world will be changed forever. The invisible will no longer remain hidden." As the figure vanished, leaving Marcus alone in his apartment once more, he felt the weight of the transformation within him. He wasn't the same person who had walked into Rising Stars Gallery weeks ago, hoping for recognition. He was no longer just an artist. He was the key to humanity's future. His art was no longer just a reflection of his thoughts, it was the gateway to an invisible world. The time had come. Humanity was about to encounter the unseen, and Marcus would be the one to lead them through the doorway. As Marcus's connection with the invisible species deepened, the transformation he had begun to experience became more pronounced. His senses sharpened, and his understanding of the world around him expanded in ways he hadn't thought possible. It was as if the very fabric of reality was bending to accommodate the presence of the unseen, allowing him to access levels of perception that had once been reserved for myth and legend. The paintings on his walls, the symbols and shapes that once seemed abstract, now glowed with an energy that was impossible to ignore. It had been 2 weeks since the encounter with the shimmering figure, and Marcus could no longer deny the truth that had begun to surface. His role was clear now. He was more than just a conduit for the invisible species. He was the bridge between the unseen and the known, the key to unlocking humanity's understanding of the world beyond their senses. But the weight of this knowledge weighed heavily on him. He wasn't sure the world was ready to see what he had seen, to understand what he now knew. In the quiet of his studio, Marcus worked tirelessly, pouring his thoughts, his emotions, and the visions that filled his mind into each new painting. The process had become almost instinctual, as if the invisible species were guiding his hand, whispering to him as he created. The brushstrokes seemed to flow effortlessly, capturing the hidden truths he was meant to reveal. But the more he painted, the more he understood, this wasn't just about his art anymore. The world needed to wake up, to understand that what they had once thought of as fantasy or myth was real. The invisible species had been there all along, watching and waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. That moment was rapidly approaching. One evening, as the sky outside his window darkened, Marcus sat back from his latest painting, wiping the sweat from his brow. The work he had just completed was unlike anything he had ever done before. It depicted a massive, invisible entity, its form shifting and twisting, both beautiful and terrifying. It was not something anyone could easily grasp with their eyes alone. It was a representation of the invisible species themselves, an essence rather than a physical form, a presence that was felt more than seen. Marcus stared at the painting, a sense of awe and fear washing over him. For a long time, he had wondered whether anyone would ever be able to understand the depth of what he was trying to convey. But now, as the final stroke of paint dried on the canvas, he knew that the time had come. The invisible species were about to make themselves known, and his art would be the catalyst for that revelation. Just as he was about to turn away from the canvas, the familiar hum in the air began to grow stronger. He felt it, not just in his mind, but throughout his body. It was as if the very air around him was vibrating with energy, resonating with the same frequency as his thoughts. He looked up, and there it was, the shimmer in the corner of his vision, the distortion in the space around him. The figure materialized once again, this time more solid than before, more defined, standing in the center of his studio. Its presence filled the room, and Marcus felt the weight of its power. But there was something new this time, something different. The figure was no longer flickering in and out of existence. It stood before him, as if it were part of the very space itself, a being of light and shadow, its form both alien and familiar. "We are ready, Marcus," the voice resonated in his mind, calm and assured. "The time has come to awaken humanity. Your art has prepared the way." Marcus's heart raced. "How do I awaken them? How do I show them what I've seen?" "You must show them what lies beyond the veil," the figure replied. "You must bring them face to face with the invisible species. They will not believe until they experience it for themselves. Your paintings, your creations, they will open their eyes." The figure extended a hand toward the painting Marcus had just completed, and a surge of energy flowed through the room. The air around the painting began to shimmer, and for a moment, it seemed as though the figure's form was merging with the image on the canvas. It was as if the painting itself had come alive, a doorway into another world. "Your art has the power to create portals, Marcus," the figure said, its voice filled with quiet awe. "You have unlocked the hidden potential within yourself. You can open the gateway for humanity to step into the unseen world. But first, they must believe. They must feel what you feel." Marcus stared at the painting, his mind racing. He had always known there was something extraordinary about his work, but he hadn't fully realized the scope of its power until now. The painting wasn't just a depiction of the invisible species, it was a portal, a bridge between worlds. His brushstrokes had opened a doorway to a reality that was both alien and familiar, a reality that had been hidden just beyond the reach of human perception. The figure stepped closer, its form becoming more solid with each passing second. "You must take the next step, Marcus. You must show humanity that the invisible is real. Only then can we fully reveal ourselves. Only then can we unite our worlds." Marcus felt a surge of determination flood through him. The time for waiting was over. He had seen the invisible species, and now, it was time for humanity to see them as well. His paintings would no longer be just works of art, they would be the first step in humanity's awakening. The figure, now standing beside him, gave a nod of approval. "You are ready. The time for revelation has come." And with that, the figure began to fade once more, its form dissolving into the air as if it were never there. But this time, Marcus wasn't left in silence. He felt the hum in the air more strongly than ever, as if the invisible species were surrounding him, waiting for the moment to unfold. He turned back to the painting, his heart filled with a sense of purpose he had never felt before. The world was about to change. Humanity was about to encounter the invisible, and Marcus Blackwell would be the one to show them the way. It was time to awaken the world. The days that followed Marcus's encounter with the shimmering figure were a blur of action and anticipation. The invisible species had told him that the time to awaken humanity was upon him, and Marcus could feel the weight of that responsibility pressing down on him with each passing moment. His paintings, once mere expressions of his inner thoughts, had become the key to unlocking a new reality for the world, one where the invisible would no longer remain hidden. Marcus knew what he had to do. He had to reveal the truth. But as the day of revelation drew closer, doubt gnawed at the edges of his mind. Would humanity believe him? Would they accept the unseen world that he had come to know? The invisible species had made it clear that the transition would not be easy. Humanity had lived in the dark for so long, oblivious to the existence of beings that lived just beyond their perception. To open their eyes now would be a monumental task, one that he wasn't sure he was ready for. Yet, he had no choice. The city around him continued its normal routine, people rushing through the streets, their lives unaffected by the cosmic shifts that were about to take place. But Marcus felt it. The invisible species were drawing nearer, their presence more tangible with each passing day. The hum he had once heard as a faint vibration in the air had grown louder, filling his thoughts and dreams. It was no longer just in his mind, it was in the world itself, as if the very fabric of reality was beginning to bend to their will. One evening, as Marcus sat in his studio, preparing his next painting, he felt the hum crescendo into a powerful pulse. It was as though the entire universe was vibrating in unison, a signal that the time for revelation had arrived. The air around him shimmered, and once again, the figure appeared, this time, more solid and more defined than ever before. "We are ready," the voice resonated in his mind, calm and assured. "The time has come for humanity to see us." Marcus stood up, his heart racing. But how will they understand? How will they accept what they see? "You must show them the truth, Marcus," the figure replied. "You have prepared them through your art, through the symbols and patterns you've created. Now, you must open their eyes. You will show them what they cannot see, and they will come to believe. Your art will be the catalyst for the awakening." The figure stepped forward, its form more stable now, its presence overwhelming. Marcus could feel the power emanating from the being, its essence was both alien and familiar, a part of the very fabric of the universe itself. "You are the chosen one," the figure continued. "The one who will lead humanity through the veil. Your paintings will be the first step. But the world is not ready to see us all at once. You must take them there, step by step. Show them glimpses of the invisible, and they will come to understand. But they must be prepared. Only then can we reveal ourselves fully." Marcus nodded, a surge of understanding flooding through him. He had always known his paintings were more than just art. They were a bridge, a path, to something greater. Now, he understood that it was his responsibility to guide humanity across that bridge. He had to show them the invisible species in a way that would make them believe. It couldn't be rushed. He had to build their trust, one revelation at a time. The figure extended a hand toward him. "We have chosen you because you see what others cannot. You are the conduit through which humanity will understand. Your art will open their eyes, Marcus. You are ready to lead them." Marcus felt the weight of those words settle within him. He wasn't just an artist anymore. He was a guide, a messenger. He was the one who would help humanity bridge the gap between their world and the invisible one. The figure's presence began to fade, but as it did, Marcus could hear one final message resonate in his mind. "Remember, Marcus, the awakening begins with you. The world will not see the full truth all at once. You must reveal it carefully, piece by piece. Only then will humanity be ready for what comes next." With that, the figure disappeared, leaving Marcus alone in his studio. The hum in the air slowly faded, but its resonance remained, like the echo of a distant storm waiting to break. Marcus stood there for a moment, his thoughts swirling. The weight of his responsibility had never been clearer. The world wasn't ready for the full revelation of the invisible species. But he would prepare them. He would take them on a journey of discovery, showing them glimpses of the unseen world until they were ready to accept it. It was time to begin. The first step. The next morning, Marcus made his decision. He would take the first step toward awakening humanity. He would host a gallery exhibit, an invitation for the world to come and witness the art that had been so misunderstood. But this time, he wouldn't just display his work. He would use it as a tool for awakening. He spent the next few days carefully selecting the paintings that would be part of the exhibit. The pieces would be a mixture of the familiar images that had once been dismissed as abstract, and the new works that had come to life in recent weeks. Each painting would represent a different facet of the invisible species, from abstract forms to more detailed depictions of their presence, allowing viewers to feel the shift in perception that had overtaken him. Marcus knew that this exhibit would be the first step in humanity's journey. He would not overwhelm them with the full truth. Instead, he would offer them glimpses, fragments of a world they had long forgotten. The night before the exhibit was to open, Marcus stood in the center of the gallery, staring at the paintings that lined the walls. The air in the room seemed to vibrate with an energy he couldn't explain. He could feel the presence of the invisible species around him, their hum filling the space. They were waiting. He was ready to lead humanity into their world. As the doors to the gallery opened the next day, Marcus took a deep breath and prepared to share the first glimpse of the invisible world with those who had no idea that their reality was about to change forever. Some of them stepped back, frowning in confusion, but others, like the critic, seemed to lean in closer, drawn to something that they couldn't quite put into words. The energy in the gallery seemed to shift, and Marcus could feel it, like a ripple in the air, an electric charge that was just out of reach. He glanced around the room, and for a brief moment, it seemed as if the paintings themselves were moving, shifting in the corner of his vision. The invisible species were responding to the energy in the room, their presence becoming more pronounced. Then, as if on cue, one of the visitors gasped. "Wait, look," she exclaimed, pointing toward a particularly abstract piece on the far wall. It's changing." Marcus's heart raced. He turned to see what she was pointing at. The painting, which had previously depicted only swirling shapes and distorted light, now seemed to shimmer and bend. The outlines of the figures within the painting began to shift, becoming more defined, more real. It was as if the invisible species were manifesting in the canvas itself, their forms becoming visible for the first time. A murmur rippled through the crowd, and Marcus stepped forward, his hand reaching out toward the painting. He wasn't sure if it was his presence that caused the change or if it was something more, but the painting seemed to respond to his touch. The energy in the room pulsed, and for a split second, Marcus felt himself pulled into the world of the invisible species. It was as if the boundaries between the two worlds were thinning, becoming more fluid. He could feel the presence of the unseen beings, their energy surrounding him, their hum filling his mind. "Do you see it?" Marcus whispered to the group gathered around him. "They're here. They've always been here. They've just been waiting for us to see them." The crowd was silent for a long moment. Then, a voice broke through the stillness. "This is impossible," said one of the critics, his voice filled with disbelief. "How is this even possible? These paintings, they're alive. It's like they're connecting to something beyond our reality." Marcus nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. "Yes. They're not just paintings. They're windows. Windows into a world that exists just beyond our sight. The invisible species has always been here, watching, waiting. And now it's time for us to see them." As the crowd began to murmur, questions filling the air, Marcus could feel the invisible species' presence growing stronger. It wasn't just in the paintings anymore, it was in the very air around them, in the space between each person in the room. They were no longer hidden. They were revealing themselves, step by step, through the art Marcus had created. The tension in the gallery was palpable, as though the walls themselves were vibrating with energy. The invisible species were no longer content to remain hidden in the shadows. They were ready to be seen. A few of the guests stepped back, still unsure, but others stepped closer, their eyes wide with a mix of awe and fear. Some seemed to understand. Others were still processing what they were experiencing. But one thing was certain, the invisible species had made their first move. They were no longer just a figment of Marcus's imagination. They were real, and they were preparing to reveal themselves to the world. Marcus took a deep breath, his heart swelling with a sense of purpose. This was just the beginning. The awakening had started, but it wasn't over yet. Humanity had seen the first glimpse of the invisible world, and now, they would have to decide whether to accept it or turn away. The world was changing, and Marcus was the one to lead them into the unknown. The days after the gallery exhibit felt like a blur, a mix of exhilaration and fear. The world had begun to change, and there was no turning back. Marcus had opened the door to the invisible species, and now humanity was peering through it, uncertain of what they had just witnessed. The reactions to his exhibit had been mixed, some were overwhelmed, others skeptical, and a few even frightened. But the truth was undeniable, something had shifted in the world, and it had all begun with Marcus's art. In the weeks that followed, the paintings continued to draw attention. News outlets began covering the exhibit, some calling it the most significant artistic revelation of the century, while others dismissed it as an elaborate hoax. But regardless of the criticism or praise, one thing was clear, people were talking. They were questioning reality, wondering if the invisible species that Marcus had depicted could truly exist. For Marcus, the attention was both overwhelming and humbling. His inbox was flooded with messages from curious individuals, some asking for interviews, others simply expressing their awe or disbelief. Some visitors to the exhibit claimed to have experienced strange sensations while viewing the paintings, shifts in perception, a sudden awareness of something just beyond the visible world. Others spoke of seeing fleeting glimpses of the invisible species themselves, as though the art had unlocked something within them, something they couldn't fully explain. But it wasn't just the public that had taken notice. The scientific community had begun to scrutinize Marcus's work, and he had been contacted by a number of researchers, all eager to understand how his paintings had somehow bridged the gap between the seen and the unseen. They wanted to know how he had done it, how he had created art that seemed to be more than just representation, but an actual portal to a hidden world. Marcus's life had become a whirlwind of media appearances, interviews, and research inquiries, but he felt the pull of something deeper. The invisible species had made it clear, they were ready to fully reveal themselves, but humanity wasn't ready. Not yet. His art had opened the door, but the world needed more time to adjust, to process the enormity of what had been revealed. One night, as he sat alone in his studio, the hum in the air became more intense than ever. It was no longer just a faint vibration, it was a pulse, a rhythm that seemed to reverberate through his very bones. The invisible species were here, and they were waiting. They were no longer content with being a mere presence in the paintings. They were ready to show themselves to the world, but Marcus knew that the moment had to be right. It had to be controlled, orchestrated. He turned toward his latest painting, a massive piece that depicted the invisible species in full form, no longer abstract, no longer shrouded in mystery, but fully revealed in all their strange and beautiful glory. It was a bold move, one that would either send humanity into a new era of understanding or plunge them into chaos. As he stood before the canvas, he felt a surge of energy wash over him. The hum in the air grew louder, and for the first time, Marcus heard a voice, not in his mind, but in the room itself. It was soft at first, like a whisper, but it quickly grew more distinct. "Are you ready, Marcus?" the voice asked. His heart raced. He recognized it immediately, it was the voice of the figure he had met so many times before, the one who had guided him. The invisible species had made contact once more. "I am," Marcus replied, his voice steady despite the flood of emotions inside him. "I'm ready." The figure materialized before him, its form solid and majestic, radiating a soft light. It looked like nothing Marcus had ever seen before, a being of pure energy and ethereal beauty. Its presence filled the room, but there was no fear, only peace. "The time has come," the figure said, its voice resonating with authority. "Humanity is ready to take the next step. Your art has opened their eyes, but now they must see us, not as a distant idea, but as we truly are." Marcus nodded. He understood. The world had been given a glimpse, but they needed to be ready for the full revelation. This wasn't just about art anymore, it was about humanity's evolution, their understanding of their place in the universe. The figure extended its hand, and Marcus reached out to meet it. A wave of energy surged through him, and in that moment, he knew the truth. The invisible species were not separate from humanity, they were part of the same fabric, part of the same existence. The divide between them had always been an illusion. The figure spoke again, its voice filled with quiet strength. "We have always been here, Marcus. We have watched and waited, just beyond your sight. But now, we will walk among you. We will reveal ourselves to the world, and together, we will build a new future. A future where the invisible and the visible are one." The room seemed to pulse with energy, the walls shimmering as if reality itself were bending. And then, slowly, the invisible species began to appear, one by one, materializing in the space around Marcus. They were beings of light and energy, their forms constantly shifting, never fully solid but always present, always real. They didn't speak, but Marcus could feel their presence, their minds reaching out to his, a silent communication that transcended words. For the first time, Marcus saw them as they truly were, not as abstract figures or distorted shapes, but as living, breathing beings. And in that moment, he realized that the world would never be the same. The invisible species were no longer invisible. They were part of the world now, and humanity would have to find a way to accept them, to integrate them into their understanding of reality. But Marcus knew this was just the beginning. The path ahead would be difficult, filled with skepticism, fear, and resistance. But there was no turning back now. The invisible species had made their move, and humanity had no choice but to confront the truth. As Marcus stood in the center of the room, surrounded by the beings he had once thought of as mythical, he felt a sense of peace settle over him. This was the beginning of a new era, a time when humanity would learn to see the world in ways they had never imagined. The invisible species were no longer just a part of his art. They were here. And the world would have to adjust to their presence.